Okay. All right. So we're gonna pick up where we left off, and we're gonna start today with the concept of an extended ratio. Now, if you go back in your notes, you will see that extended ratio was one of your vocabulary terms. So you should already have that written down in your notes. So an extended ratio, as you can see, is a ratio that compares three or more numbers. Okay, so if I have, as I do here, a chart, I have three different things. So in an extended ratio, my general extended ratio looks like this. A to B to C. Gentlemen, if you would like to come teach this lesson, I welcome you to come up and do it so I can sit in the back and talk to my friends. But if you don't want to come up and teach the lesson, then I suggest that you sit there and take notes. Alright, so an extended ratio, A to B to C. Now what we can do is we can take any two of the three and make a ratio. So I can say A to B, I can say B to C, and I can say A to C. So if we take a look at this chart that talks about apples, oranges, and bananas, the extended ratio would read what? How would that read? Justin, how would I create an extended ratio for this line?
What, 2, 3, right?
Well, I want to make one extended ratio, just like this.
Oh, so 2 and 5?
Right. So I'm going to put 2 to 3 to 5. Okay? What that means is, for every 2 apples that I have 3 oranges, and I have 5 bananas. And that what's nice about a ratio is everything stays the same. In other words, as I increase the number of apples, it's also going to change the number of oranges and the number of bananas by the same amount. So if I go from 2 apples to 4 apples, I doubled the number of apples that I have. So if I double the number of apples, my extended ratio tells me that I also double the number of oranges, and I also double the number of bananas. Now, one thing you need to be careful of is this is all multiplication. 2 is kind of tricky because, yeah, you could say, yeah, 2 plus 2 is 4. So why don't I add 2 oranges and add 2 bananas? The answer is that ratios deal with multiplication. They don't deal with addition. So we're not adding 2 apples. We're multiplying. 2 times 2 apples. 2 times 3 apples. 2 times 4 apples. So here we're multiplying 3 times 2. 3 times 3. 3 times 4. And same thing with the bananas. Okay, so that is the concept of an extended ratio. Now, how, you may ask, do we use an extended ratio? Well, here's an example of a problem. I have a triangle, and I'm told that the ratio of the sides of the triangle is 3x to 5x to 6x. So I set up my ratio, 3x to 5x to 6x. I'm also told that the perimeter of the triangle is 98 inches. So what I want to know is, what is the length of the longest side of the triangle? Right? what do we know about the perimeter of a triangle? It equals what? In general.
180. 98.
In general, the perimeter of a figure means what?
The end, the back of it.
The outside. You add up the sides of the triangle to get the perimeter. So, what do we do here to set up our problem? Joe, what do we do here? How do we set up our problem?
3x plus 5x plus 6x.
And what about 3x plus 6x plus 5x?
Equals 90.
Equals 98. Micaiah, is that what you would do, or would you do something different? Do you have a different way maybe you would try to set this problem up? No, you do it the same way? Okay, it's reasonable. It's a good way to do it. So how do we do it? How do we go about solving this?
Add 3x, 5x, and 6x.
And what'd you get?
Get 14.
I would get 14 also. So 14x equals 98, which means that x equals
7.
7. Everybody should be able to do this because everybody at the very least should have the calculator out. Okay, now, on a multiple choice test, I promise you, one of your answer choices is going to be 7. That's for the lazy student. So if you have this as a multiple choice question and you pick 7, it's because you're the lazy student. And you just go with the first answer you come up with.
So you're telling us right now that that's not going to be the answer?
That's right. The question asks, what is the length of the longest side? So how do we find the length of the longest side? Someone else, please. Someone else, please. Alan.
Take x. Put 7 plus x plus
Okay. So we're gonna substitute x. So we're gonna get 3 times 7 and 5 times 7 and 6 times 7, right? So 3 times 7 is 21, 5 times 7 is 35, and 6 times 7 is, try that again. 42. So my answer is 42. Very good. Okay. Gabby,
Yes.
would you do this the same way that Alan did? Once we found that x is equal to 7, would you try a different way, or are you happy with figuring out the length of each side and picking the one that's longest? You do the same thing? Micaiah? Micaiah would go right to 6. Why, Micaiah? What's so special about picking just 6? That's right. We already know that 6 is the longest side because x is going to be the same for each answer, and that no matter what x is, when we multiply it by our largest number, that's going to give us our largest number. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way that Alan and Gabby would have done it. It's a matter of choice. Now, on that multiple choice question, I bet you these are the other 3 answers. I bet the answer 4 answer choices are 7, 21, 35, and 42. Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? Okay, so I want you to do one. So, okay, what I want you to do is, the triangle has a ratio of 4 to 7 to 9. The perimeter is 60 inches. I want you to tell me the length of each of the 3 sides. Okay, does anybody have any questions on where the answers came from? Did anybody get anything different? Anybody not understand where the answers come from? Basically, remember what I said, just add an x to each one. So we have 4x plus 7x plus 9x equals 60. Add them up, you get how many x? 20. Which means that x is equal to 3. And you plug your 3 back in. Okay, you need to stop. Put it away, and then when the bell rings, take it. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about today, it's actually the last thing, are proportions. Now, a proportion, when you saw in the vocabulary, a proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. Okay? Now, we also had, back in the vocabulary, we had the extremes of the proportion and the means of the proportion. The extremes of the proportion are the outer terms. So these are the extremes. And then these two terms are the means. So again, the outer two terms are the extremes. The inner two terms are the means. I don't appreciate that you're talking to each other instead of focusing up here. You know, if everybody in the class had A's, then I'd be like, fine, talk to each other, because at least y'all are getting the material, you're all getting A's. Or even if you all had A's and B's, that'd be fine. But you don't have A's and B's. 2 people got B's. And everybody else got C's, D's, and F's. So people with C's, D's, and F's do not have the right to ignore me while I'm trying to teach. Especially when you won't take the time on your own to review this stuff. 45 minutes a day is not enough time to learn anything. Never mind geometry. But you at least have to use the time that you are in class to focus on what we're doing. Otherwise, you're never going to be successful. So in a proportion, we say that the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. In other words, if I set this up as a fraction, 2 to 3 equals 4 to 6, the product of the means equals the product of the extremes simply means this. And everybody knows what that is. The way we solve a proportion is by cross multiplication. Book gives it some fancy term called the cross products property. Cross multiplication. So let's go through. I'm confident that everybody can solve a proportion using cross multiplication. So let me give you one that's a little more tricky. Okay? Okay, so this one's a little more tricky. Tyler, can you set this problem up for me, please? Very good. Jonathan, you're not. All right. I didn't expect it to take the whole time. Dylan, what's next, please? Good, so what do you get when you distribute the 3?
3y, 3y plus 12 equals 9y.
Good. Anna, what's next? Just 3? Ah. From where? So I get that 12 is equal to y, which means that y equals what? Y equals 2. Very good. Now if you want to check your answer, plug in 2 for y, see if your proportion makes sense. So I have 2 plus 4, which gives me 6. 6 over 9. Y is 2. I get 2 over 3. Is that a true statement? Does 6 over 9 equal 2 over 3? Yes, it does. One is just a simplified version of the other one. What? It's as hard as it gets. Actually, the only thing I could do to make it harder would be to have you do distribution on both sides. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Last thing we're going to cover today is called writing an equivalent proportion. Okay? Okay, so we are told that this is a true statement. Okay, so what we want to know is we want this to be in the form x over y equals y. We want this fraction. So what are we going to do? We write the proportion. Now, we didn't discuss it, but there's a property of proportions that allows you to switch the means. So if we go back to the means are here. The mean is the denominator of the fraction on the left and the numerator of the fraction on the right. So, where are my means? 6 and y. So I can switch them, putting y at the bottom over here, which means that my fraction is, if I switch y and 6, I get x and y over here, and I get 6 over 7 over there. So the ratio that completes the proportion is 6 over 7. Okay?
Well, you can just get that down from the machine.
Okay.
The shape isn't going to be like that.
That's true. And sometimes you won't have a shape at all.
So you're just switching. Excuse me, why are you switching?
Because
Oh, that's
because I want to know if my proportion is x over y, what's the numerical portion of x over y. So in order to do that, you want to put the x and y in the same fraction. And the way you do that is you're able to flip to means.
Okay. That's, I'm like, what's the difference?
Okay, I'd like you to do this one. Okay, use this proportion. But I want you to tell me let's talk about it. Okay. We also, what's the relationship of x over 6 and 6 over x? They are what? They are reciprocals. So if I can take this and find its reciprocal, I can do the same thing here. So my answer is going to be what?
7 over y.
7 over y.
I thought it was a black.
Okay, so that's basically it.